We're going to explain how to use sudo inside a Docker container. This isn't typically recommended for security reasons, but understanding how it's done is useful in specific circumstances, like debugging or running specific tools that require elevated privileges. There are several approaches, each with its own trade-offs. 1. Building with a user that has sudo privileges. The safest and most recommended approach is to create a user inside your Docker image that has sudo privileges. This avoids running the container as root, a major security risk. You do this by adding a user during the image build process, using commands like useradd and usermod agwheel username. Then your Docker file would specify this user as the default user to run the container. Your cmd instruction in the Docker file would then execute your application as this non-root user, enabling sudo access only when needed. This needs careful planning to ensure you're not granting excessive privileges. 2. Using Gosu. Gosu is a tool designed to switch user IDs securely within a container. It's a better alternative than sudo, because it allows for more granular privilege control. You can install Gosu in your Docker image and then use it to switch to root for specific tasks, potentially running a specific command as root, and then returning to the original non-root user. This offers more control than using sudo directly. 3. Running the container as root, generally discouraged. You can run the container as the root user by using the on-user root flag during the docker run command. However, this directly contradicts Docker's security best practices and severely increases the risk of compromise if the container is ever compromised. Therefore, this should only be considered a last resort for testing or very specific debugging scenarios. If you take this approach, understand you're accepting a significantly increased security risk. Your Docker file won't need any special user management in this case. 4. Using Docker exec with sudo. Limited use. After a container is running, you can use Docker execs to run commands inside the container. If the container is running as root, again, not recommended, you can combine this with sudo to execute commands with elevated privileges. Remember though, this doesn't change the underlying security risks of running as root. 5. Security considerations. Remember that even with these methods, running commands as root within a container poses a significant security vulnerability. Carefully consider the implications before doing so, and always prioritize using a non-root user with only necessary privileges.
Minimize the use of sudo inside the container to the absolute minimum required, and use the most secure method available.
Always build with security in mind and avoid compromising your container security for convenience. Regular updates and security scanning are essential to mitigate risks even with the most cautious approach.